So the survey question at Smerconish.com today asks, who are you rooting for? And I don't mean Bengals and Rams. I mean Joe Rogan and Neil Young, because I guess you've got to pick your side in all of this.
And what side are you picking?
Well, I have mixed feelings about this. I have
do we need other choices? What?
I have voted. On the survey question at Smerconish.com.
Well, what did you vote? What is your thinking?
Okay, I'm just going to try and explain to you my logic, if I may, rather than just give you the bottom line. First of all, I'm a huge Neil Young fan. I've always loved Neil Young's music. We recently instituted new bumpers on the program, and one of those at the top of the list is Harvest Moon. I will never forget. What year did we take out What year did SEAL Team 6 take out bin Laden? I think it was 2011.
Yes.
I want to say May of 2011. Where could you have found me the night that bin Laden was taken out?
Is that where you were?
Neil Young concert at the Tower Theater of Philadelphia with Liberal Paul. And I've told the story on air multiple times about how we were leaving the Tower and people's phones were buzzing and there was like something going on, but you didn't know what it was. And I remember we were on the car ride back to my place, and all of a sudden the news started breaking that the president was going to make an address, and indeed he did, and the rest is history. That was Neil Young. So not only do I love the music, but I have a positive association with Neil Young with the killing of bin Laden.
Sure.
Strange as that sounds.
There you go.
In this particular episode, though, as I discussed on radio today, Neil Young, I think, is getting a little heavy-handed now in telling Spotify employees, these 20-somethings, to quit their jobs over Joe Rogan.
Are you a Joe Rogan fan? You definitely, you're a Neil Young fan, but what is your, do you listen to him?
I have listened to him. My sons turned me on to Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
First time I ever heard of Joe Rogan was from one of my sons, my 20-something sons, who said, "Dad, you ought to really listen to this guy." I remember that they turned me on to a particular couple of episodes where there's a guy named Bob Lazar who tells a very compelling, Area 51-ish story, which is just like prime fodder for Joe Rogan, because Bob Lazar will convince you that there is extraterrestrial life and that the government knows it, and that they've got a hangar where all these alien craft are lined up in a row, and he has seen them.
So wait, if this
it's very hard to turn it off.
If this is the kind of thing that Joe Rogan does, why is anybody surprised at what's going on with COVID?
He does all sorts of things.
But meaning he goes deep and entertains people that perhaps have unusual ideas.
Joe Rogan strikes me as a very bright guy. Some of the subject matter that he pursues does not evidence great knowledge. I think it was Aaron Blake in the Washington Post, and I've got it somewhere in front of me, said he's a dude. He's like the ultimate dude having a conversation of the sort that you might have around your dinner table or in a bar room, only he's got an enormous audience. Yeah. So if you're in a bar room and you're saying something that's untrue, there's a very limited, damage that gets done. With Rogan, because of the enormity of his Spotify reach, the stakes are higher. And I get that. Look, I don't like the trend toward cancellation. I don't even want to say cancel culture, because that then gets painted in a very conservative way, like, oh, he believes that there really is cancel culture. I just think that I think it's very difficult. You actually give strength to the people that you're seeking to stifle when you start removing episodes like Spotify did. They just took 70 of his episodes off the shelf from his inventory that he brought with him when they did that deal. Like, he apparently brought his whole archive. I'm always talking about my book club archive.
So he went into the basement and the attic and brought it all to Spotify.
This would be like...
And then they took 70 of those. Now, where are those 70? Can they not be heard at all?
TC, I'm sure that they'll probably have like life as bootlegs and be even more popular, which is part of my point.
Right.
Maybe it's better to just leave it all out there and refute it.
And were the 70 on COVID?
No.
No, I was going to say there's no way.
I don't.
That's too many episodes.
I don't think they were on COVID.
All.
I shouldn't have answered that so quickly. Here's how I'm torn.
Tell me.
I'm torn because this is the old issue that I've talked about with regard to Facebook and Twitter, which is the question of what exactly are they? Are they a platform only? Are they like AT&T providing a phone line where they can't be held accountable for the things that get said over the phone line? Or are they a publisher like the New York Times, which right now is on trial with Sarah Palin suing them for defamation? This gets back to that whole Section 230 conversation. Section 230 consists of 26, I think,
26.
words, 26 words that created the internet. And in creating the internet, I guess Al Gore wrote this, I'm joking, but there was protection given to internet platforms so that they couldn't be sued. The bigger question to me is, what is Spotify? Is Spotify just a platform like the phone line, or are they now a media company, a publisher of sorts, like the New York Times? I will tell you this, if Spotify starts to take down certain episodes of Joe Rogan's podcast, they are acting now more as an editor, more as a publisher, and I think they will open themselves up to liability.
And trying to help themselves in making a mistake.
Correct. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think that they're causing people who have never heard of Joe Rogan to want to know, like, what's he all about? Can I share with you? Because I found it in front of me. Okay, this is Aaron Blake in the Washington Post trying to sum up how do we regard Joe Rogan. And he says, it's about where you draw the line. As we've written before, things like the validity of election results and vaccines are two issues which require the utmost care given the stakes for democracy and public health, respectively. This is where it gets touchy, because it's one thing to say, don't police speech, let people exercise their opinions, but when those opinions question democracy and spread misinformation about the election and January 6-ish stuff, then all of a sudden you say, but if you just let it go, you're really allowing an attack on the core of democracy in this country. Similarly, if you allow misinformation to be spread about COVID, that's not your typical political debate. In other words, it's
public health. I mean, you're literally putting people in danger if that's a problem, right?
Right. So is there one standard when we're arguing about Social Security, or whether to stop Russia from going into Ukraine, or the multitude of other issues? Like
legitimate different opinions, right? Versus right and false and not,
But when it comes to democracy,
right,
or a pandemic, then you say, whoa, we're not going to allow this information to be spread. How do you set that standard?
I don't know, Michael. And the problem is, I feel this day and age, you say so often, we're talking about sort of, should you have a straight news channel? Is CNN going to go back to straight news? The problem is, half the people aren't going to believe that. That's the problem.
What is straight news?
That's my point.
Let me tell you something. You know that on radio, I talked about the Johns Hopkins meta study last week that came out. It was actually not original. It was not original data gathering, but rather an assessment of all of the surveys that had been done on the effectiveness of so-called lockdowns, right?
Right.
And it concluded, the Johns Hopkins survey concluded, that lockdowns really did nothing to save lives. I'm giving you a really simplistic version of that. You didn't hear me talk about it on CNN, and nobody has talked about it on CNN. Okay, so is that straight news reporting? Is that what exactly is that?
Is that study false?
I don't think that study is false.
Is it misleading in some way?
I think that there's just, I had Lena Wen on this program discussing that study.
Interesting.
And when I brought it up, what did Lena Wen say? Lena Wen said, well, we really never had a lockdown. So how can you say that a lockdown didn't impact morbidity?
But then the headline is misleading.
My approach would be to say, to discuss
with someone like Lena Wen.
With someone like Lena Wen,
right,
like we did on radio.
Right.
Okay, let me get back to Rogan, if I mind here, because I thought that this was the greatest paragraph that summed up Rogan that I've read. Aaron Blake from the Washington Post. Which brings us to Rogan. He's perhaps a case in point when it comes to our current dilemma. Unlike certain others, his dissemination of the coronavirus misinformation doesn't appear to be so malicious or deliberate or even necessarily a bid to further a political agenda. He's a dude, in the truest sense, without a medical or traditional journalistic background, combing through the same conspiratorial information that your friends and relatives are, and inviting some fringe figures on to talk about it for hours at a time. And then he goes on to say, like, what's the worst that has come out of Rogan's program pertaining to the pandemic? One thing, that ivermectin is the end of COVID. Or he had this guy on named Robert Malone, a vaccine scientist who spread some misinformation about mass formation hypnosis. So, you know, some faulty logic and misinformation have come from Rogan's program. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think Joe Rogan himself might concede that point. So what do you do about Rogan? Do you take away the platform from him? Do you do what Neil Young is saying? Like, hey, Spotify employees, you ought to quit your job? That doesn't feel right to me.
I feel like you're voting on today's poll question. I think I know. I know which way you're voting.
I'm a fan of Neil Young.
I know, but in this very particular instance,
I'm not a viewer or listener of Joe Rogan, other than when my sons say, "Dad, you would enjoy this podcast."
Right.
Frankly, I looked at his whole lineup of past podcasts. I'd rather listen to TC After Dark.
Why not?
Because a lot of the things that
what are you saying? Like, that sounds like, I'd rather, like, you know,
no.
go watch paint dry.
No. I'm saying that TC After Dark has subject matter that I find interesting. 90% of the time that I look at Rogan's lineup, both the guest name and the summary, it's of no interest to me. I'm sure that says something about me, you know, more than it says about him. I'm not a fan of Rogan's work in the way that I'm a fan of Neil Young's work, okay? But in this instance, I don't like the trend toward cancellation.
Interesting.
You know, whether it's Joe Rogan or Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi Goldberg said something a week ago that was foolish and misinformed, but not malicious. So I thought that the public spanking that she received was punishment enough, and that ABC should not have given her, you know, a 2-week suspension from The View. So I might be wrong, but I think that I'm at least consistent, except in the most egregious of circumstances.
Which you know when you see it.
Which I think I know when I see it. I'm not someone who says, you know, cancel them and take them off
no,
the.
You're definitely
and
not.
frankly, if you do, if you're Spotify and if you go that route, all you're going to do is send him over to Rumble, and they can pay him $100 million a year. That's what I think.
Wow.
So do you think you know how I'm voting now?
I think I know how you're voting, and I encourage everyone to go do thusly.
Okay. Have you decided how you're voting?
I'm thinking about it. Yeah.
Clouds to the left of me.